Hello, welcome to our channel. Enjoy this story. The rain had started to fall as I sat on the curb, clutching the broken handle of my suitcase as if it were the only thing tethering me to reality. The water mingled with my tears, and I could no longer tell what was soaking my face more. My knees were trembling, not just from the chill of the falling evening, but from the shock, from the humiliation that still burned in my chest like live coals. 2 hours. Only 2 hours had passed since Mrs. Christine Miller had thrown me out onto the street, the way one throws out the trash. I could still hear her shrill voice, full of contempt. "Get out of my house, you useless moocher. 8 years and you haven't even given me a grandson. You are an embarrassment, an empty woman who has only served to clean and cook like the maid you always were." I squeezed my eyes shut, but that only made the images more vivid. Martin, standing behind his mother, looking at the floor, unable to defend me even in that final moment. My husband, the man who promised to love me for better or for worse, the same man who didn't say a word when his mother started throwing my clothes out the second-story window, my dresses falling like wounded birds, my hairbrush shattering against the pavement. Our wedding photograph, the one where I was smiling full of hope, broken into 1,000 pieces on the wet lawn. And then this suitcase, the same old suitcase I arrived at this house with 8 years ago, back when I still believed in fairy tales. "At least you're taking what you brought," Mrs. Miller had said with a cruel smile. "Nothing in this house is yours. Nothing. Put on your rags and get out before I call the police." I got dressed in the yard under the gaze of neighbors peeking through their windows, my hands shaking. I tried to gather what I could of my life scattered on the ground. A muddy sweater, mismatched shoes, the chain that belonged to my mother, miraculously intact among the debris of my existence. Now, I was here, on this unfamiliar sidewalk, because I didn't even have the courage to stay in front of that house. I walked aimlessly for almost an hour until my legs couldn't take it anymore, and I let myself fall onto this curb, in this neighborhood I didn't recognize, with a suitcase falling apart in my hands, just as my life had fallen apart. I had no money. My mother-in-law never allowed me to work. "The wives of the Millers don't work," she would say. "It's a disgrace." So I spent 8 years cooking, cleaning, attending to every whim of that woman while Martin worked at the family auto parts business. A modest business, enough to give them airs of grandeur, but insufficient for the reality Mrs. Miller believed she deserved. And I, stupid me, tried to please her. I learned to make her favorite casseroles, though they were never good enough. I cleaned her house until my hands were raw, though she always found imaginary dust in some corner. I endured her comments about my body, my face, my uselessness in giving her grandchildren. 5 miscarriages in 6 years. 5 times my body betrayed me. 5 times Mrs. Miller called me barren, empty, useless. Martin never defended me. At first, I thought it was cowardice, that he was afraid to stand up to his mother. Over time, I understood that he simply agreed with her. I wasn't enough. I never had been. Probably never would be. The sound of an engine pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up, expecting to see some car pass by like all the others, but this one didn't pass by. This one stopped right in front of me. A gleaming black Mercedes, even under the rain. The tires crunched softly on the wet pavement, and my heart gave an absurd lurch. For a moment, just for a moment of madness, I thought it was Martin, that he had come to find me, that he would tell me it had all been a terrible mistake, a nightmare, that please come back home. But when the door opened, the man who stepped out wasn't Martin. He was older, perhaps 60, dressed in a dark suit that looked expensive even to my inexperienced eyes. Silver hair perfectly slicked back, upright posture, elegant. He held a black umbrella that he opened with a fluid motion before approaching me. He looked at me with a strange expression, something between compassion and relief, and said in a firm but kind voice, "Miss Valerie Turner, your father is waiting for you." The world stopped. The rain, the noise of distant traffic, everything turned to silence. Only those words remained floating in the air, impossible, absurd. "What?" I managed to articulate, though my voice sounded like a croak. My Aunt Sophia, who raised me after my mother died when I was 6, had repeated it to me 1,000 times. "Your father abandoned us before you were born. He was a heartless man who wanted nothing to do with you all. When you had to have emergency appendicitis surgery at 5, he found out and didn't lift a finger. He died shortly after in an accident, and it was the best thing he could have done for you." "There must be a mistake," I said, trying to stand up. My legs barely held me. The man extended a steady hand to help me, and I took it out of pure instinct. "My father is dead. He died over 30 years ago." The man shook his head slowly, reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, and pulled out a bulky manila envelope. "There is no mistake, ma'am. Mr. Richard Sterling has been looking for you for 32 years, every day of these 32 years. And finally, he found you." He held the envelope out to me. I took it with hands trembling so violently I almost dropped it. Inside were documents, but the first thing I saw was an old photograph, one of those with edges worn by time and colors slightly faded. A young woman, beautiful, with my same straight nose, my same wide mouth, my same dark, wavy hair. She was holding a little girl, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, who was smiling at the camera, missing 2 teeth, and behind them, with his arms around both of them, a man with light eyes, dark hair, and a genuine smile. I turned the photograph over with shaking hands. On the back, in slanted handwriting and faded ink, it said, "Eleanor, Valerie, and me. Last day together. April 1993. The air escaped my lungs. My mother, me, and that man who was supposed to have died when I was 5. "No, I don't understand," I whispered. The tears began to fall again, mixing now with confusion, with something I didn't dare name yet. My Aunt Sophia told me my father had died, that he abandoned us, that he never cared about us. The man, who still hadn't introduced himself, looked at me with profound sadness in his eyes. "Miss Valerie, your Aunt Sophia lied to you. Your father never abandoned you, never stopped looking for you, and he is very sick. He doesn't have much time left. Please, allow me to take you to him. Allow me to explain everything on the way. But we must leave now." I looked at the photograph again. That little girl was me. I knew it with every fiber of my being. I recognized the mole on my neck, the shape of my small hands. And that man had my eyes, the same light eyes, almost gray, that had always made me different in a family of dark eyes. I looked up toward Martin's house, that 2-story construction with the front lawn that had never, ever felt like my home. The curtains in the living room moved slightly. Mrs. Miller spying, enjoying my misery, probably calling the neighbors to tell them how she had kicked out her useless daughter-in-law. I thought about the 8 years I spent in that house. 8 years waking up at 5 a.m. to prepare Mrs. Miller's breakfast exactly how she liked it. Black coffee, no sugar, with 2 pieces of toast barely browned, butter but never margarine, strawberry jam but only a certain brand. 8 years cleaning every corner of that house while she followed me with poisonous comments. "Oh, Valerie, you look like a maid. You just don't have poise, you don't have class. My Martin lowered himself so much by marrying you." 8 years cooking elaborate meals for family dinners where Mrs. Miller invited her friends to show off and then made me eat in the kitchen. "You can't sit with us dressed like that. What will they think?" 8 years listening to how she told Martin, believing I couldn't hear her, "You should divorce her. She's defective, she can't give you children. Get yourself a real woman." And Martin, my husband, the man who once told me he loved me, never defended me a single time in 8 years. When his mother insulted me, he looked the other way. When she made me cry, he locked himself in his room. And today, when she threw me into the street like trash, he simply stood there, silent, like the coward he always was. "What do I have to lose?" I heard myself say aloud. The man in the suit looked at me with understanding. I already lost everything, or so I thought. "My name is Robert Foster," he said finally, extending his hand formally. "I am the personal assistant to Mr. Richard Sterling, your father, and I can assure you, Miss Valerie, that you have not lost everything. In fact, you have just found it." I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm. He picked up my broken suitcase from the ground with care, as if it were something valuable and not a piece of falling-apart luggage. He guided me toward the car, opening the rear door with a gesture that mixed urgency and a respect no one had shown me in years. I slid into the back seat. The interior smelled of new leather, of that expensive cologne I only knew from magazines, of an impeccable cleanliness I had never experienced. It was like entering another world. Robert placed my suitcase in the trunk with care, and then sat behind the wheel. "Ready?" he asked, looking at me through the rearview mirror. I didn't know if I was ready. I didn't know what was happening, but I nodded anyway, because what else could I do? Go back to that curb in the rain? Try to knock on the door of a house that had spit me out? The car started smoothly, so different from Martin's old truck, which always coughed and shook. Robert drove in silence for the first few minutes, giving me time to breathe, to process. I stared out the window without really seeing anything, just blurs of light and shadow through the wet glass. Finally, Robert spoke. His voice was soft, almost gentle, as if he feared breaking me with the words he was about to say. Your father, Mr. Richard Sterling, met your mother when they were both very young. He was 22, studying medicine at the university. She was 20. She was an elementary school teacher at a school downtown. They met in a library. He was studying for an exam. She was looking for books for her students. She tripped over a stack of books he had left on the floor and everything fell over. She apologized 20 times while they picked up the books together. He says he fell in love in that very moment. I found myself smiling despite everything, imagining that scene. My mother had been beautiful, I remembered, vaguely, and kind, always so kind. They saw each other every day after that. He waited for her after school. She brought him lunch at the library. Within 6 months, they were planning to get married. He introduced her to his family, hoping they would welcome her with open arms. But the Sterling family had other plans for their only son. Robert paused, as if the next words weighed on him. The Sterlings are or were one of the wealthiest families in the country. Construction, real estate, investments. Mr. Richard was the heir to all of that. And his parents, your grandparents, had already arranged his future. They wanted him to marry the daughter of another important tycoon, someone who would bring more power, more money to the family. Your mother, Eleanor, was a public school teacher, the daughter of immigrants who had arrived with nothing and worked their whole lives. For the Sterlings, that wasn't enough. Rage began to boil in my chest. How familiar this all sounded. Another rich family looking down on someone for not having enough money, enough of a last name, enough class. Mr. Richard fought for her. He told his family that Eleanor was the love of his life, that he would marry her with or without their blessing. He renounced his inheritance, his last name if necessary. But his parents played dirty. Robert gripped the steering wheel tightly. Even after so many years, the story seemed to infuriate him. They told him they needed him to travel to Europe for 2 weeks, an urgent business trip to save an important contract. They begged him. They told him if he did this, they would accept his marriage to Eleanor. He was young, naive. He trusted them. And? I asked, though I could already imagine the answer. When he arrived in Europe, he discovered his parents had canceled all his identification documents. They froze his bank accounts, took his passport, left him trapped in London with no way to return, no money, nothing. It took him almost 3 years to get help, to scrape together money, working whatever jobs he could find, to get new documents. 3 years, Miss Valerie. 3 years desperate to get back to the woman he loved. I felt nauseous. 3 years. My mother was pregnant during those 3 years. She had her baby alone. She had me alone. And my mother? I asked with a broken voice. What did they tell her? They showed her forged documents, doctored photos of Mr. Richard with another woman in Europe, kissing her at what looked like a wedding. They told her he had married an English heiress, that he had forgotten about her, that she had never been more than a pastime for him. Your mother was 5 months pregnant when they showed her those photos. I closed my eyes, imagining my mother's pain alone, pregnant, believing the man she loved had betrayed her in the cruelest way. The Sterling family offered her money, an obscene amount of money, to disappear, so she would never try to contact their son again, so she would never claim anything. Your mother threw the money in their faces. She told them she preferred to starve rather than accept a cent from such vile people, and she disappeared. She changed cities, used her maternal grandmother's maiden name, Turner, and cut all contact with anyone who could lead the Sterlings to her. She wanted to protect you from those people. But my father came back, I whispered. You said it took 3 years, but he came back. Yes. When he finally returned, he searched for your mother desperately. It took him 6 months to find her, but by then, Robert swallowed hard. By then, your mother was already married to another man. A Mr. Julian Ross, your stepfather. A memory hit me like a punch. Julian. A large man with heavy hands and breath that smelled of cheap beer. I remember hiding under the table when he came home. I remember my mother with bruises she tried to cover with makeup. I remember screaming, broken plates, fear. He was violent, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, a violent alcoholic who made your mother's life impossible. She had married him out of desperation, seeking protection, a father for you, but it turned out to be worse than being alone. Mr. Richard found her, tried to help her, begged her to let him rescue both of you. But your mother no longer trusted him. She thought he had betrayed her, that the photos were real, that everything had been a lie. And she was afraid. Julian Ross threatened to kill both of you if your father came near again. He threatened to hurt you specifically if your mother left him. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. My mother had suffered so much, had protected me so much, and I never knew. Your father was forced to stay away, but he never stopped watching over you. He hired people to follow you, to ensure you were safe. He sent anonymous money that your mother probably thought came from some charity organization. He did what he could from the shadows. And then, your mother got sick. Cancer, I whispered. I remembered it vaguely. My mother getting thinner, losing her hair, coughing until she couldn't breathe. Lung cancer. Your father paid for all the treatments in secret through dummy foundations, but it was already too late. She died when you were 6. And before she died, she finally learned the truth. Mr. Richard went to see her at the hospital one last time. He showed her evidence, real documents, proof that they had both been deceived. Your mother cried, asked him for forgiveness, asked him to take care of you. But by then, Julian Ross had already called his sister, Sophia Ross, to take charge of you. My Aunt Sophia, I said bitterly. The woman who raised me in a 2-bedroom apartment where money was always tight, where clothes were secondhand, and meals were rice and beans 6 days a week, where every dollar was counted and every wish was an impossible luxury. Your Aunt Sophia hated your father with all her soul. She blamed Mr. Richard for everything, for your mother's pregnancy, for the marriage to her abusive brother, for your mother's death. It wasn't rational. But grief and family fanaticism cloud reason. When your mother died, your aunt took you and disappeared. She changed her last name, forged documents, moved to another city, used every trick possible to erase your trail. But you found me, I said, looking out the window. We were no longer in the city. The landscape had changed to exclusive residential zones with mansions hidden behind high walls and extensive gardens. It took him 32 years, Miss Valerie. 32 years of private investigators, following cold leads, dead ends. 6 months ago, finally, an investigator located you. He saw you leaving your husband's house, followed you, confirmed your identity by comparing photographs, physical features. Mr. Richard wanted to approach immediately, but his lawyers advised caution. He didn't want to scare you. He didn't want you to think he was some kind of con artist or that he was crazy. So he waited. He hired people to watch you discreetly, to understand your life, to find the right moment. He was spying on me, I said, but without the anger I should have felt. After everything that had happened today, after everything I had just discovered, it was hard to feel indignation about that. He was protecting you, corrected Robert again. And when today he saw via the security cameras placed near that house what your mother-in-law did to you when he saw you being thrown into the street, he knew he couldn't wait any longer. His health has deteriorated rapidly in the last few weeks. The doctors give him perhaps 2 or 3 months to live. He doesn't have time for careful plans. He only has time for the truth. The car slowed down. In front of us, an imposing wrought iron gate rose like the entrance to another world. A uniformed security guard approached, recognized the car immediately, and saluted with respect before pressing a button. The gates opened silently like the gates of heaven. We entered along a driveway of perfectly laid cobblestones, bordered by ancient trees that formed a tunnel of green shadows. To the sides, gardens that looked like they were taken from a magazine, flowers I couldn't name perfectly tended, small fountains, marble statues, paths disappearing among precisely trimmed bushes. And at the end of the road, the house. No, it wasn't a house, it was a mansion. 3 stories of elegant architecture with white columns at the main entrance, enormous windows glowing with the sunset light, balconies with wrought iron railings, a circular fountain in the center of the courtyard featuring a bronze sculpture of a woman and a little girl embracing. Your father commissioned that sculpture 20 years ago, Robert said softly. It is your mother and you from the photograph I showed you. He looks at it every day from his window. I couldn't speak. I had no words for any of this. Robert parked the car in front of a side entrance, not the main one. "Your father prefers you enter through here," he explained. "It is more private, more intimate." We got out of the car. Robert took my broken suitcase from the trunk with the same care as before, as if it were a priceless treasure. He guided me toward a dark, carved wooden door. A uniformed employee opened it from the inside, greeting us with a bow that made me feel completely out of place. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior, marble floors reflecting the light of crystal chandeliers, walls with paintings that seemed to belong in a museum, antique furniture, elegant, perfect. Everything smelled of cleanliness, of fresh flowers, of a quiet luxury I had never experienced. We walked through silent hallways, passed by staff who greeted us with respect, looking at me with poorly disguised curiosity. We arrived at a private elevator, small, paneled in wood and mirrors. Robert pressed the button for the 3rd floor. "He is in his room," he said as we ascended. "For the last few months, he has spent most of his time there. He is too weak to move much. He has 24-hour nurses, doctors who visit daily. He is doing everything possible to prolong his life until you are ready to take the reins of all this." "Take the reins," I repeated, feeling panic. "Robert, I don't know anything about business. I barely finished high school. I spent the last 8 years cleaning houses and cooking. I can't run a business empire." Robert looked at me with a kind smile. "No one expects you to do it alone, Miss Valerie. Your father has prepared everything. He has advisors, lawyers, trusted executives who have been with him for decades. They will guide you. They will teach you everything you need to know. But it needs to be you who makes the final decisions. You are his heir, his only family, his blood." The elevator stopped gently. The doors opened to a private hallway, more intimate than the spaces below. Here there were photographs on the walls. I approached one, trembling. It was my mother, young, beautiful, smiling at the camera. And next to her, the man with light eyes from the photo Robert had given me, my father. They looked so in love, so happy, so completely oblivious to the tragedy awaiting them. There were more photos. My mother pregnant, radiant. Me as a baby, in my father's arms, both asleep on a sofa. Me learning to walk with my father kneeling in front of me, arms outstretched. Me on my 3rd birthday, covered in cake, laughing. "These are the only photographs he could get before your aunt disappeared with you," Robert explained. "They are his most precious treasure. He looks at them every day." Tears fell again. I couldn't stop crying. A whole life of photographs I never knew existed. Evidence of a father who had loved me, who had been there, who had wanted to be there. Robert stopped in front of a carved wooden door at the end of the hall. He knocked softly. "Come in," said a voice from inside, weak, raspy, but with unmistakable warmth. Robert opened the door and gestured for me to enter. I took a step forward, then another. The room was large, illuminated by the soft light of the sunset entering through enormous windows. There were medical machines to one side, a nurse in a white uniform who discreetly withdrew upon seeing me enter, and in the center, in a huge bed with pristine white sheets, was him, my father, Mr. Richard Sterling. He was a man devastated by illness, thin to the bone, with pale, almost translucent skin, tubes connected to his arms, a monitor beeping softly marking his pulse. But his eyes, those eyes clear as the winter sky, identical to mine, were bright, alert, filled with tears. "Valerie," he whispered with a voice cracked by emotion and illness. "My little girl, my little Valerie." I stood paralyzed in the entryway, not knowing what to do, what to say. This man was a stranger, but he was also my father. My father who had looked for me for 32 years. My father who had never abandoned me. My father who was dying. He extended a trembling hand toward me. "Please," he said, "please, come closer. Let me see you. Let me look at you closely, just once." My legs moved of their own will. I walked toward the bed step by step until I was beside him. Up close, I could see the tears running down his sunken cheeks. I could see how he trembled, not just from the sickness, but from emotion. "You are identical to your mother," he whispered. "My God, you are exactly like her. Beautiful, so beautiful. And your eyes, you have my eyes." "Yes," I managed to say. "I always wondered where they came from." My whole family had dark eyes, except me. "Because you are mine," he said fiercely, with a pride no one had ever shown for me. "You are my daughter, my blood, and I have waited my whole life to tell you." Then it happened. His arms reached out toward me, fragile but insistent, and I, who had spent the day being humiliated, thrown out like trash, called useless and barren and empty, found myself falling into those arms. I found myself crying against the chest of this dying man who was my father. I found myself clinging to him like the little girl I never got to be in his arms. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry, my little girl. Forgive me. Forgive me for not being there, for not protecting you, for not giving you the life you deserved. Forgive me." "It wasn't your fault," I managed to say between sobs. "Robert told me everything. It wasn't your fault. I love you," he whispered against my hair. "From the moment you were born. From before you were born. I have lived every day of these 32 years with a hole in my chest where you were supposed to be. And now you are here. Finally, you are here." We stayed like that, embracing, crying together, while the sun set outside and the shadows lengthened in the room. A father and a daughter, reunited after a lifetime lost, after so many lies, so much pain, so much injustice. And in that moment, sitting on that bed next to this man who was a stranger but also my blood, I realized something. I hadn't lost everything today when Mrs. Miller threw me into the street. I hadn't lost anything that truly mattered. Because everything I thought I had, my marriage to Martin, my life in that house, my place in that family, had never really been mine to begin with. But this man, this father who had searched for me tirelessly, this love that had existed the whole time even though I didn't know it, this was real. This was mine. And for the first time in 8 years, perhaps for the first time in my whole life, I felt truly at home. I woke up in a bed I didn't recognize. For a moment of pure panic, I thought it had all been a dream, that I was still in Martin's house, that at any moment I would hear Mrs. Miller's heavy footsteps in the hallway, her voice screaming at me to get up and make breakfast, but the sheets under my fingers were of a softness I had never known. The mattress sank perfectly under my body, without the broken springs that dug into my back every night. And the silence. God, the silence was absolute. No traffic noise, no shouting neighbors, no Mrs. Miller's television at full volume from 6 a.m. I opened my eyes slowly. Sunlight streamed through white sheer curtains, illuminating a room that was larger than the entire apartment where I grew up with Aunt Sophia. Ivory-colored walls, dark wood furniture that smelled of beeswax, a Persian rug that probably cost more than a car. On the bedside table was a pitcher of fresh water with lemon slices and a crystal glass. I sat up slowly, still disoriented. I was wearing a silk nightgown that wasn't mine. Someone had changed my clothes while I slept. The memory made me blush until I saw a folded note next to the water pitcher. "Miss Valerie," it said in neat handwriting. "Nurse Carmen changed your clothes last night when you fell asleep next to your father. Your clothes are being washed. You will find robes and comfortable clothing in the closet. When you are ready, ring the bell next to the bed and someone will come to escort you to the dining room for breakfast. Robert Foster." I touched the silk of the nightgown, so different from the old cotton t-shirts I slept in at Martin's house. Martin's house. I could no longer call it my house. It had never really been my house. I got up and walked toward the closet. When I opened it, I gasped. There were clothes, not just clothes, but dozens of items still with tags. Soft cotton robes, casual dresses in my exact size, new underwear, socks, velvet slippers, all in soft colors, nothing ostentatious, but all of a quality I had never touched. I chose a light blue robe and put it on. It fit perfectly. I walked toward the full-length mirror in the corner and almost didn't recognize myself. My hair was messy, my eyes swollen from so much crying, but there was something different in my expression. A small spark of something that had been dead for years. I rang the bell. In less than a minute, someone knocked softly on the door. "Come in," I said with an uncertain voice. A woman of about 50 entered, dressed in an impeccable maid's uniform, but with a warm smile that reminded me of my mother. "Good morning, Miss Valerie. I am Martha, the housekeeper. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," I responded automatically, though my mind was still processing that someone had called me Mrs. with genuine respect and not the poisonous sarcasm Mrs. Miller used. "Mr. Richard is waiting for you for breakfast. If you'll allow me, I will accompany you." Martha waited patiently while I put on the slippers, without pressuring me, without rushing me. Then she guided me down the hall. We went down the elevator, crossed the house until we reached a glass-enclosed sunroom filled with plants and natural light. There was my father, sitting in a wheelchair next to a table set for two. He looked a little better than last night, although he was still thin and pale, but his eyes shone when he saw me enter. "Valerie," he said, and his voice, though weak, sounded full of joy. "I thought maybe it had been a dream, that I would wake up and you would have disappeared again." "I'm here," I said softly, approaching. I sat across from him at the table. "I still don't fully understand what is happening, but I am here." "That is all I need," he responded. "That you are here, that I can see you, that I can talk to you." Martha and another employee began to serve breakfast. And what a breakfast! Fresh fruit cut into perfect shapes, freshly baked bread that filled the terrace with its aroma, eggs prepared 3 different ways, homemade yogurt with honey, freshly squeezed orange juice, coffee that smelled like heaven. I stared at it all, not knowing where to start. At Martin's house, breakfast was instant coffee and day-old bread if I was lucky. Mrs. Miller ate first, the best parts, and I ate what was left over after serving her and Martin. "Eat whatever you want," my father said, noticing my hesitation. "It is all for you. You don't have to wait for anyone's permission anymore, Valerie. You don't have to settle for leftovers anymore." Those words broke something inside me. I took a piece of bread, still warm, and spread butter on it, which melted on contact. The first bite was a revelation. It tasted like home, like love, like everything I had never had. We ate in silence for a few minutes, me trying not to devour everything like a starving woman, though that was exactly what I was. He watched me with a tenderness that made me want to cry again. "Robert told you what happened," he said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I answered, "but there is still so much I don't understand. Why did my Aunt Sophia lie to me for all those years? Why did she tell me you had died? Why did she make me grow up thinking you had abandoned me?" My father sighed deeply. "Hatred, misdirected pain. Your Aunt Sophia was the younger sister of Julian Ross, your stepfather. When your mother died, she blamed everyone except her brother. She blamed me for making her fall in love, for leaving her vulnerable. She blamed your mother for marrying Julian, seeking protection, but she never blamed her brother for being a violent alcoholic who made your mother's life hell. We lived in poverty," I said bitterly. "The apartment where I grew up. Clothes were secondhand, food was always scarce. I went to sleep hungry many nights. And you had all this. You could have given me a completely different life." I saw the pain in his eyes and felt terrible immediately. "I'm sorry," I rushed to say. "I didn't mean—" "No," he interrupted with a firm voice, despite his weakness. "You have a right to your anger. You have a right to your pain. I am angry too, Valerie. I am furious. I lost 32 years with you. 32 years that will never come back. I didn't see you grow up. I wasn't there when you learned to read, when you graduated from school, when you got married. I couldn't protect you from that man and that family that hurt you. I couldn't be your father when you needed me most." His hands shook as he spoke. I took one of them in mine, surprised by how fragile it felt, like bird bones wrapped in paper. "But you're here now," I said. "I found you too late," he whispered. "I have 3 months if I'm lucky. 3 months to know my daughter, to try to make up for 32 lost years. It is a cruel joke of fate, don't you think? Then, let's not waste time," I said, surprising myself with my own firmness. "Tell me everything. I want to know everything about you, about my mother, about everything I missed." And so he did. We spent the whole morning on that terrace while he told me the complete story, how he met my mother in that library, their first kiss in the rain after leaving the movies. The way she laughed with her whole body, without reservation, how she loved teaching, how her students adored her, the plans they had, the house they were going to buy, the children they wanted to have. He told me about his parents' betrayal with details that made me hate them with every fiber of my being, how they tricked him into getting on that plane to London, how they left him with nothing in a strange country, how he fought for 3 years to return, working whatever he could, saving every penny, facing endless bureaucracy to get new documents. When I returned, he said with a broken voice, and discovered that Eleanor had married that man, that monster who beat her, I almost went insane. I tried to get her out of there. I begged her to give me another opportunity, to let me explain what had really happened. But she didn't believe me anymore, and he, Julian, threatened to kill both of you if I didn't disappear. The police were on his side, he had contacts, he was dangerous, and I had to stay away because the alternative was putting you in more danger. But you kept watching us, I said softly. Every day. I hired people to follow you, to make sure you were okay. I sent anonymous money, paid your mother's medical bills in secret. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But it was all I could do without putting you at risk. And when she died, I tried to get to you immediately. I had lawyers ready, documents prepared, everything ready to claim you legally. You were my daughter. I had the right. But your Aunt Sophia was faster. She disappeared with you in less than 24 hours, and when I found her, she had already forged documents declaring her your legal guardian. She had changed your last name, invented a complete history. I filed lawsuits, but she had bought judges, fake witnesses who swore I was a danger to you. The legal battle lasted years, and I lost. The rage I felt was visceral. My Aunt Sophia had stolen a whole life from me. She had condemned me to poverty when my father could have given me everything. She had lied to me about who I was, where I came from, who loved me. Why? I asked, though Robert had already given me part of the answer. Why would she do that? What did she gain by making revenge? My father said simply. She blamed your mother for marrying her abusive brother. She blamed your mother for dying and leaving her alone with that responsibility. And above all, she blamed me. In her twisted mind, taking you out of my life was justice. It was making me pay for all the pain she believed I had caused. We sat in silence. Me processing all this, him catching his breath. I could see that talking so much exhausted him, but I could also see that he needed to say it all, to explain it all. Before it was too late, I never stopped looking for you, he continued after a moment. I hired private investigators, the best ones, but your aunt was sharper than anyone expected. She moved you to 3 different cities before you turned 10. She changed your name in school records. She kept you out of any system that could track you. She paid bribes, threatened people, did whatever was necessary to keep you hidden. And she kept me poor, I added with bitterness. Money was always missing. Always. Clothes were used, food was the cheapest possible. She made me feel like a burden, as if she were doing me a huge favor by giving me a roof. It was probably part of her revenge, my father said with sadness. Making sure you grew up with nothing, thinking you were worth nothing, so that I could never give you what you deserved, even if I found you. A soft knock on the door interrupted us. Robert entered with a thick folder under his arm. Good morning, Mr. Richard. Miss Valerie, he greeted formally. Excuse the interruption, but there are matters we need to discuss. My father nodded. Go ahead, Robert. Valerie needs to know everything. Robert sat down and opened the folder. Inside were documents, many documents. Miss Valerie, your father has prepared everything for you to take his place as the heir to the Sterling Group. This includes all companies, properties, investments, and assets he has accumulated during his life. Wait, I said, raising my hands. I don't know anything about business. I have no education. I barely finished high school and then I married Martin. I've spent the last 8 years cleaning houses. I can't run a business empire. You won't be alone, my father said firmly. I have a full team of professionals who have been working with me for decades. Robert will be your right hand. There is Mr. Reynolds, my lead attorney, who handles all legal matters. There is Patricia Mendez, the accountant, who oversees finances. There is Mr. Stone, the engineer who directs construction. They all know what they are doing. They are all absolutely trustworthy. But I'm the one who would have to make the final decisions, I said, feeling panic. What if I make the wrong decisions? What if I ruin everything you've built? My father laughed, though the laugh turned into a cough. I waited, scared, until he caught his breath. My child, what I have built is not easily ruined, and besides, you have my blood, you have my instinct. I know it. I felt it last night when we talked. You have your mother's intelligence and my determination. You just need to learn. And for that, we have time. Some time. 3 months? I asked quietly. Maybe 4 if the doctors are optimistic, but it is enough for the basics. And after that, you will have Robert and the whole team. I trust them, as I trust you. Robert pulled a document from the folder. This is Mr. Richards' will. It is already legally registered. You are the sole heir. There is also a considerable trust fund in your name that you can access immediately. And these, he pulled out more papers, are documents to begin the process of restoring your original legal name. Valerie Sterling, not Valerie Turner. My real last name, the name I should have carried my whole life. There is more, Robert continued. Your father has also prepared documents to annul your marriage to Martin Miller. Under the law, that marriage was conducted under a false identity, given that you used the name Turner when your legal name should have been Sterling. Furthermore, there is evidence of abandonment and psychological abuse that facilitates the process. Divorce? I asked. The word felt strange in my mouth. I had thought about divorcing Martin 1,000 times over the last few years, but I never had the courage, the resources, the strength, and now they were offering it to me on a silver platter. Annulment, corrected Robert. It is faster and cleaner. The marriage simply ceases to have existed. There is no division of assets because you have no assets from that marriage. Everything they owned belonged to the Miller family. You leave with nothing, but you also owe them nothing. I want you to do it, my father said. I don't want that man to have any right over you, any legal tie he can use against you when he discovers who you really are. When is he going to find out? I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. My father and Robert exchanged a look. Soon, my father said finally, very soon, and I want you to be prepared for that. I want you to know who you are, to understand your position, so you can face them from a place of strength and not weakness. I spent the next few days in a strange fog, divided between 2 worlds. In the mornings, I had breakfast with my father on that light-filled terrace. He told me stories about my mother, about the childhood I didn't remember, about the life we should have had. He showed me photos, letters my mother had written him before everything fell apart, old videos where I appeared as a baby. In the afternoons, while my father rested, Robert gave me intensive lessons. Introduction to the Sterling Group, he called them. He explained every division of the company, every business, every investment. It was overwhelming. Construction of commercial buildings, residential developments, malls, technology investments, renewable energy, 6 industries I didn't even know existed. You don't have to memorize it all, Robert assured me when he saw my panicked expression. You just need to understand the basics. The rest you will learn with time. And when you don't know something, ask. That's what we are all here for. I also met the team. Mr. Reynolds, a man in his 60s with thick glasses and a memory that seemed photographic, explained legal aspects with infinite patience. Patricia Mendez, the CFO, was a serious woman in her 50s who taught me to read financial statements as if they were storybooks. Mr. Stone, the engineer, the youngest of the group at barely 40, showed me construction blueprints and explained how each project worked from concept to delivery. Everyone treated me with a respect I had never experienced. No one spoke to me with condescension. No one made me feel stupid for not knowing. When I asked questions, they answered seriously, taking the time to explain every detail. It was so different from my life with Mrs. Miller that sometimes I pinched myself to ensure it was real. One afternoon, Martha took me to a room on the 2nd floor I had never seen. Mr. Richard ordered this prepared for you 3 months ago when he knew you had been found, she explained as she opened the double doors. It was a dressing room. No, it was more than a dressing room. It was an entire room dedicated to clothes, dresses, suits, casual clothes, formal wear, shoes, bags, accessories. All in my size, all elegant but not showy, all perfect. He chose every piece personally, Martha said softly. He spent hours with the stylist, making sure everything was appropriate, elegant, comfortable. He wanted you to have options, so you would never have to use old or borrowed clothes again. I touched a navy blue silk dress. The fabric slid through my fingers like water. In Martin's house, I had 3 dresses, all old, all bought at discount stores. Missus Miller mocked them constantly. "You look like a hobo," she would say. "You're embarrassing." "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to say anything, Miss Valerie. You just have to accept that you deserve this, that you always deserved this." That night, during dinner, my father asked me a question that would change everything. "Valerie, what do you want to do with your life? If you could do anything, be anything, what would you choose?" I stayed silent, chewing slowly. No one had ever asked me that. Not my Aunt Sophia, who decided I should leave school at 16 to work. Not Martin, who assumed my only function was to be his wife and his mother's maid. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "I've never been able to think about that. I've always done what others expected of me." "Then, this is your moment to discover it," my father said. "You have resources now. You have time. You have freedom. If you want to study, study. If you want to travel, travel. If you want to run the business, we will teach you. If you want to sell it all and dedicate yourself to charity, do it. The choice is yours, Valerie. For the first time in your life, the choice is completely yours." The idea was so foreign, so impossible, that I didn't know how to process it. On the 5th day, Robert entered my room early in the morning with a serious expression. "Miss Valerie, there is something you should know. Your husband, Martin Miller, has been making calls. He is looking for you." My heart stopped. "What?" "Apparently, the family business is in serious financial trouble. Mrs. Miller took out loans she can't pay. They are on the verge of bankruptcy, and now Martin is looking for you. He probably thinks he can convince you to come back, to help him in some way." "I have nothing to give them," I said automatically. "I never had anything." "But now you do," Robert replied. "And he doesn't know that yet, but he will. Everyone will know soon. Your father wants to make a public announcement, officially introduce you as his daughter and heir. It is part of securing your position, of protecting you legally, of ensuring no one can question your right to all this when he is no longer here." "A public announcement," I repeated, feeling panic. "In front of whom?" "In front of the media, in front of business partners, in front of the society that matters in this circle. Your father is a very well-known figure in the business world. Your appearance as his heir will be major news. And that means your husband, your mother-in-law, and anyone who knew you before will know exactly who you are now." The idea terrified me and excited me in equal measure. Seeing Mrs. Miller's face when she discovered the woman she threw out like trash was the daughter of one of the richest men in the country. Seeing Martin realize what he had lost due to his cowardice. "When?" I asked. "In 2 weeks. Your father wants you to have time to prepare, to learn the basics, to be ready." "I won't be ready in 2 weeks," I said with desperation. "I won't be ready ever." "You don't need to be perfect," said my father, who had appeared in the doorway in his wheelchair without us noticing. "You just need to be there firm, sure of who you are, and I will be by your side, Valerie. As long as I can breathe, I will be by your side." The following days were a whirlwind. Martha took me to an exclusive salon where they cut and styled the hair I had worn long and unkempt for years. They gave me a manicure, pedicure, facial treatments. I felt like a doll being prepared for an exhibition, but also, for the first time in my life, I felt cared for. A stylist came to the house with dozens of dresses for me to choose the perfect outfit for the announcement. Something elegant, but not intimidating, my father instructed. "I want them to see her as she is. A strong woman, but accessible. Powerful, but not arrogant." We chose a dark blue dress, classic cut, elegant without being ostentatious, high heels that made me walk differently straighter, more confident, and a simple pearl necklace that had belonged to my maternal grandmother. "You look beautiful," my father said when I tried it on, "just like your mother the day I met her." But at night, when everyone left and I remained alone in that huge room, the fear returned. Who was I for this? I was Valerie Turner, the woman who cleaned bathrooms and cooked for a cruel mother-in-law. I was the woman who couldn't give her husband children. I was the woman thrown into the street with a broken suitcase. How could I be Valerie Sterling? How could I be the heir to an empire? How could I look important businessmen and lawyers in the eye and not feel like a fraud? One night, at 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, walked barefoot through the silent hallways to my father's room. The night nurse was dozing in a chair in the corner. My father was awake, looking out the window toward the moonlit garden. "I can't sleep either," he said when he saw me enter. "Come, Sit with me. I sat on the edge of his bed. He took my hand in his. I'm scared, I admitted quietly. I'm so scared. What if I can't do it? What if I disappoint everyone? Valerie, look at me, he said with a firm voice despite his weakness. I have spent 32 years imagining who you would be, what kind of woman my little girl would become. And now that I know you, I can tell you with absolute certainty that you are stronger than you think. You survived a difficult childhood, you survived an abusive marriage, you survived being thrown into the street with nothing, and you are here. You are still standing. You are still fighting. That strength, that resilience, is what you need for this. But I don't know anything, I insisted. And I will teach you. Every day I have left, I will teach you everything I can. And what I don't get to teach you, you will learn. Because you are my daughter, and Sterlings never give up. He hugged me, and I stayed there in his fragile arms, feeling for the first time in my life what it meant to have a father. A father who believed in me, a father who saw me as something more than a disappointment or a burden. The next day, my true education began. It wasn't just informal chats or reviewing documents anymore. My father, despite his illness, got up every morning and gave me classes. How to read a balance sheet. How to identify a good investment. How to negotiate. How to read people. How to walk into a room and make everyone know you were someone important. Confidence doesn't come from knowing everything, he told me one afternoon. It comes from knowing you can learn what you don't know. It comes from surrounding yourself with good people to help you. It comes from believing in yourself, even when no one else does. He also taught me about the Sterling family. His parents, those who had destroyed his life with my mother, had died years ago. I never forgave them, he said with a hard voice. They died without knowing you, without knowing anything about you. And I'm glad. They didn't deserve to know you. I had cousins, he explained, children of distant uncles who had tried to get close to him for years looking for money, favors, positions in the company. I kept them away, he said. They aren't real family, just vultures waiting for me to die to fight over the scraps. But there won't be scraps. It is all yours. Every cent, every property, every share. And there are legal documents so airtight that not even the best lawyer in the country could break them. A week after arriving at the house, Robert gave me news. Martin Miller filed a missing person report, he said with an ironic smile. He says he is very worried about his wife who hasn't returned home. Apparently, the police told him that since you are an adult who left voluntarily, they can't do anything. But he is making noise on social media, asking if anyone has seen you. Is he really looking for me? Or does he just want to look good? I asked. Investigators say the family business is worse off than we thought. They owe 3 months of rent on the shop. Suppliers are suing them. Mrs. Miller is desperate. And apparently, someone mentioned to them that you might have family with money. I laughed humorlessly. Seriously? Now suddenly they want me back because they think I have money? Human nature is predictable, my father said from his wheelchair. Greed always wins over pride when there is enough money involved. The day of the announcement arrived faster than I expected. I woke up with my stomach in a knot, my hands shaking while Martha helped me get dressed. The dark blue dress fit perfectly. The heels gave me height and elegance. But inside, I was still the same Valerie who had been thrown into the street 2 weeks ago. Breathe, Martha told me while arranging my hair in an elegant bun, but not too formal. Breathe and remember who you are. You are Valerie Sterling, daughter of Richard Sterling. No one can take that away from you. I went down to the main hall where my father was waiting for me. He had insisted on attending the event despite his doctor's objections. He was in his wheelchair, dressed in an impeccable dark suit, thin and fragile, but with eyes shining with determination. You look beautiful, he said when he saw me. Your mother would be so proud. Robert arrived with a briefcase full of documents. Everything is ready. The media is waiting. We have invited the main newspapers, television channels, business publications. Also present are the most important partners of the Sterling Group, some members of the board of directors, and key figures in the business sector. How many people? I asked with a trembling voice. Approximately 150 people, Robert answered. I know it sounds intimidating, but your father will be by your side the whole time, and I will be there too. You are not alone in this. The event was held in the main ballroom of the Hotel Emperor, one of the most exclusive in the city. When we arrived, there were cameras everywhere, journalists with recorders, elegant people chatting in small groups while drinking champagne. I clung to the arm of my father's wheelchair. He put his hand over mine. "Calm down, my child. Just be yourself. That is all you need." Robert guided us toward the stage where they had placed a podium with microphones. The lights were bright, almost blinding. My heart beat so hard I thought everyone could hear it. My father took the microphone first. His voice, though weak, resonated clearly in the silent room. "Good afternoon. Many of you know me as Richard Sterling, founder and CEO of the Sterling Group. I have dedicated 40 years of my life to building this company, creating jobs, contributing to the development of our country. But today I am not here to talk about business. I am here to talk about family." He paused. I could see it cost him to breathe, but he refused to show weakness. 33 years ago, I met the love of my life. Valerie Turner was an elementary school teacher, an extraordinary woman who filled my world with light. We fell in love. We had a daughter, but circumstances beyond our control separated us. Lies, family betrayals, and a series of tragedies ripped away the life we should have had together. The silence in the room was absolute. Cameras filmed every second. My daughter was snatched from my life when she was just 6 years old. I spent 32 years looking for her. 32 years without knowing if she was okay, if she was happy, if she knew she had a father who never stopped loving her. And 2 weeks ago, finally, I found her. He looked at me with eyes full of tears. "Today, I have the honor of presenting to you my daughter, the sole heir to everything I have built. Valerie Sterling." All heads turned toward me, cameras focused, flashes began popping, and I, with trembling legs, approached the microphone. "Good afternoon," I said, surprised that my voice sounded firmer than I felt. "My name is Valerie Sterling. Until 2 weeks ago, I didn't know my father was alive. I grew up believing he had abandoned me. I lived 38 years thinking I was an orphan, that I had no family, that I didn't matter to anyone. I could feel tears threatening, but I held them back. Discovering the truth has been overwhelming. Discovering that I have a father who searched for me tirelessly, who never gave up, who loves me unconditionally, is a gift I never thought I would have. And although the time we have left together is short due to his illness, I am infinitely grateful for every moment." My father took my hand. I squeezed it tightly. "My father is teaching me to occupy my place in the Sterling Group. I won't be perfect. I will make mistakes. But I promise to honor his legacy, to work with the same integrity he has always maintained, and to make him proud. Thank you." The room erupted in applause. The cameras didn't stop clicking. Journalists shouted questions that Robert filtered carefully, allowing only a few. "Where were you all these years? Who hid you? How does it feel to discover you are a billionaire? Do you have business experience?" I answered as best I could with honesty, but without giving too many details. Yes, I had lived in modest circumstances. No, I didn't blame my father for anything. Yes, I was learning fast. No, I had no plans to sell the company. After the official press conference, the social part began. Important business people approached to greet, to introduce themselves, to assess. I could see their looks, some with genuine curiosity, others with barely disguised skepticism, some clearly thinking I was an opportunist. "Richard, congratulations," said an older man in a gray suit. "What a joy that you finally found your daughter, although I must say, it is a surprise to everyone." "Life is full of surprises, Edward," my father responded with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Valerie is my legitimate daughter. The documents are in order. Everything is legal and transparent." More people approached. An elegant woman with too much jewelry looked me up and down with barely hidden disdain. "It must be difficult adapting to this world coming from wherever you were." "It is," I admitted calmly. "But I am learning. And I have excellent teachers." The woman sniffed and walked away. My father chuckled softly. "That is Beatrice Caldwell, a viper. Her husband has been trying to get me to sell him a division of the company for years. Now that she knows you will inherit everything, she is furious." So passed 2 hours. Greetings, superficial conversations, constant assessments. My feet hurt from the heels, my face hurt from smiling, but I stood firm. Robert introduced me to every important person, whispering relevant details to me. "This is the president of the bank that handles our main accounts. This is the director of the Builders Association. That is a competitor who has been waiting for your father to die to try to buy the company at a fire sale price. Knowledge is power, my father had told me, and Robert was giving me all the knowledge I needed. I was talking to a group of executives about an urban development project when I saw him. Martin was at the back of the room near the entrance, still with the security guard who clearly didn't want to let him pass. He was wearing his best suit, the same one he used at our wedding, now a little tighter around the waist. His hair was slicked back with too much gel, and his face showed a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that looked dangerously like greed. Next to him was Mrs. Miller, dressed in a hot pink suit that did not flatter her, with hair dyed an artificial blonde, excessive makeup. She looked exactly like what she was, a middle-class woman pretending to be more than she was. Robert saw them at the same time I did. "Does my husband know them?" I said quietly. "And my mother-in-law." Robert made a subtle signal, and 2 more security guards approached Martin and Mrs. Miller. I could see Martin arguing, gesturing, pointing at me. Mrs. Miller had her mouth open, staring at me as if she had seen a ghost. "Do you want them removed?" asked Robert. I looked at my father. He returned the look, leaving the decision in my hands. This was my moment. My opportunity to face them from a position of strength. "No," I said finally. "Let them in. I want to talk to them." Robert nodded and signaled the security guard. Martin and Mrs. Miller were escorted toward where we were. I could see the looks of the other guests, the curiosity, the gossip starting. Martin arrived first with that smile I knew so well, the smile he used when he wanted something. "Valerie," he said, trying to sound casual. "My God, I was so worried. You disappeared without saying anything. I've been looking for you everywhere." "Really?" I asked with a cold voice I didn't recognize as mine. "Were you looking for me, Martin? Or were you looking for someone who could save you from bankruptcy?" His smile faltered. Mrs. Miller approached, still in shock. "Valerie, what is all this? What is happening? Are you Richard Sterling's daughter?" "Yes," I answered simply. "I am Valerie Sterling. I always was. It's just that you never bothered to really know me. You only cared that I couldn't give you grandchildren and didn't have money to offer you." "Valerie, my love," Martin began, extending a hand toward me. I took a step back. He let his hand drop. "I know things didn't end well between us. I know my mother went too far. But we are family. We can fix this. We can start over." "Start over," I repeated, and a bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Start over at what, Martin? At your mother treating me like her servant? At you throwing me into the street when she orders it? At 8 years of humiliation and contempt?" "It was a mistake," he said quickly. "A big mistake. We were stressed about money, the debts. My mother wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking clearly. But I love you, Valerie. I have always loved you." "You never loved me," I said with a calm that surprised me. "If you had loved me, you would have defended me even once, just once, in 8 years. But you never did. You preferred the comfort of pleasing your mother over the dignity of your wife." Mrs. Miller finally found her voice. "Valerie, I understand you're upset, but you don't need to be so dramatic. We all make mistakes. We are family. Families forgive. And now that you have resources, we can help each other. The business is going through a tough time. We just need a small loan, something insignificant for someone like you now." There was the real reason. They hadn't come to apologize. They hadn't come because they cared. They had come for money. "A small loan?" I asked. "Like the small insults you threw at me every day? Like the small humiliations? Like the small broken suitcase you kicked me out with?" "That was 2 weeks ago," protested Mrs. Miller. "You need to get over it. Don't be spiteful." My father coughed softly, drawing attention. When he spoke, his voice was soft but contained a steel that made everyone pay attention. "Mrs. Miller, Mr. Miller, allow me to clarify something. My daughter owes you nothing. In fact, you owe her 8 years of her life. 8 years of abuse that we have documented carefully these last few days. Witness statements from neighbors, security camera footage, medical records of her multiple miscarriages that you ignored completely." Mrs. Miller paled. Martin looked confused. "We have more than enough evidence to proceed legally against you for psychological abuse," my father continued. "But my daughter, because she is a better person than either of you, has decided simply to end all relationship cleanly. The annulment documents are being processed. In 2 weeks, legally, you will never have been related to her, and I strongly suggest you do not try to contact her again." "You can't do that," said Martin with panic in his voice. "We are married. I have rights." "You have no rights," said Robert, intervening. "The marriage was contracted under a false identity. Miss Valerie used the last name Turner when legally her last name is Sterling. That alone is enough for an annulment. Furthermore, there is emotional abandonment, psychological abuse by the family, and the fact that you literally threw her onto the street. Any judge will rule in favor of Miss Sterling. And believe me, we have the best lawyers in the country." Mrs. Miller turned to me with fake tears in her eyes. "Valerie, please, don't be cruel. I know I made mistakes, but we are family. You can't abandon us like this." "You abandoned me first," I said quietly. "When you threw me into the street with a broken suitcase, when you called me barren and useless, when you made me feel like I was worth nothing. That was your abandonment. This is simply justice." "Please," begged Martin, and for a moment I almost felt bad for him. "Almost bankrupt. We will lose everything. My mother will lose her house. We just need help. Can you give us something? Just a little." I looked at this man who was my husband for 8 years, this man who never defended me, who never protected me, who saw me cry 1,000 times and never asked why, and I felt nothing. Not love, not hate, not even pity. Just profound indifference. "No," I said simply. "I am not going to give you anything because you never gave me anything, except pain. And I don't say it with anger, Martin. I say it as a fact. You made your choices. You chose money over kindness. You chose pride over love. You chose cruelty over compassion. And now, you live with the consequences of those choices." "It's over," I interrupted firmly. "There is nothing more to talk about. The guards are going to escort you out, and if you try to contact me again, we will take legal measures. Understood?" Robert signaled, and the security guards approached. Martin looked around desperately, seeking support, finding only curious faces and some satisfied smiles. The business society enjoyed the drama but would not support the losers. "This isn't going to stay like this," threatened Mrs. Miller as the guards escorted them toward the exit. "We are going to sue. We are going to—" "Try it," my father said with a cold voice, "and you will encounter the fiercest legal team in the country. Choose your battles wisely, Mrs. Miller, because you have already lost this one." I watched them go. Martin looking back, still in shock. Mrs. Miller furious, shouting empty threats. And when the doors closed behind them, I felt something break inside me. Not from pain, but from liberation. As if chains I had been carrying for years had finally shattered. "Are you okay?" asked my father softly. "Yes," I responded, surprised to realize it was true. "I'm okay. Better than okay." In fact, the rest of the event passed in a blur. More introductions, more conversations, more evaluations, but I didn't care as much what they thought anymore. I had faced my demons. I had looked into the eyes of the people who made me feel less than nothing and told them no, that they deserved nothing from me, that they had no power over me, and it felt incredible. That night, back at the mansion, my father and I had dinner on the terrace as usual. But this time, there was something different in the air, a sense of closure, of one chapter ending and another beginning. "I am proud of you," my father said. "The way you handled that situation today, with class, with firmness, but without unnecessary cruelty, that is what makes a true leader." "I learned from the best," I responded, smiling. "Valerie," he said after a moment with a serious voice, "I need to talk to you about something important. The doctors gave me news today. My condition has worsened faster than expected. Perhaps I have weeks left, not months." Terror hit me like a punch. "No, I barely found you. You can't." "Shh," he calmed me, taking my hand. "Listen to me. I have had a full life. I have built an empire. I have loved deeply. And now, at the end, I found my daughter. I got to know you. I got to tell you how much I love you. That is more than many get. I am at peace with this. But I'm not," I said, tears running freely. "It's not enough time. I need more time with you. I need years, decades. I need to recover everything we lost. I know, my child, I would want that too. But it isn't our decision. So, let's use the time we have wisely. There is still so much I want to teach you, So much I want you to know. The following days were intense. My father, despite his growing weakness, insisted on teaching me everything possible. He took me virtually through video calls to the different headquarters of the company. He introduced me via video to key executives, managers, important employees. He explained every project underway, every investment, every important decision that would need to be made in the coming months. Robert will guide you, he assured me constantly, and the team is solid. But you must be the one to make the final decisions. You are the Sterling. You carry my blood, my name, my legacy. We also spent time simply being father and daughter. He told me stories of his childhood, of his parents despite all the bad they did, of his grandparents who would have adored me. He showed me family photo albums explaining who each person was, what stories lay behind each image. "This is your grandmother, maternal," he said, pointing to an old photo. "Your mother's mother. She died when you were 2. But she adored you. She said you were the most beautiful child she had ever seen. She used to sing you songs in Italian. Do you remember?" And surprisingly, yes. Vaguely, in the back of my memory, there was a soft voice singing words I didn't understand, a memory so old I thought I had invented it. But it was real. It was my grandmother. "There is so much I will never know," I said with sadness. "So many people I never met, but now you know," my father responded. "Now you know where you come from, who your ancestors were, what blood runs through your veins, and no one can take that away from you." A week after the public announcement, Robert called me to his office with news. "The Miller business officially declared bankruptcy yesterday," he informed. "The house where they lived will be foreclosed on next month. Mrs. Miller is living temporarily with a sister, and Martin. Martin is trying to get a job, but his reputation in the industry is ruined. People talked. Everyone knows how he treated you." "How do I feel about that?" I asked aloud. "How do you feel?" asked Robert. "Nothing," I admitted. "I thought I would feel satisfaction. I thought I would feel like justice was done. But I only feel indifference, as if they were strangers whose lives don't concern me." "That is maturity," Robert said with approval. "Revenge would have been getting actively involved in their destruction. What you did was simply not save them from the consequences of their own actions. There is an important difference." The days became routine. Mornings, learning the business with Robert and the team. Afternoons with my father, increasingly weak but still mentally sharp. Nights studying documents, memorizing names, preparing myself for the day I would have to do it alone. And then, that day arrived. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks and 4 days after the black Mercedes stopped in front of me on that curb. Martha came to my room with tears in her eyes. "It's Mr. Richard," she said softly. "The doctors say it is a matter of hours. He wants to see you." I ran to his room. He was in the bed, surrounded by machines, the beep of the monitor getting slower. But when he saw me enter, he smiled. "My beautiful girl," he whispered. "Come here." I sat on the edge of the bed, taking his hand. It was cold, so fragile. "Dad," I said, and it was the first time I used that word. "Please, don't leave me. I need you." "You don't need me anymore," he responded with a voice barely audible. "You are stronger than you think, smarter, more capable. And you are going to do incredible things, Valerie. I know it." "I can't do it without you," I sobbed. "Yes, you can, and you will. Because you are my daughter, because you carry my blood, because your mother would have been so proud of the woman you have become." He paused, breathing with difficulty. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that you will live. That you won't just survive, but truly live. That you will find true love. That you will build your own family. That you will be happy. Promise me." "I promise," I said, crying so hard I could barely speak. "I love you, Valerie. I always loved you, every day of these 32 years, and I am going to love every day in eternity. I love you too, Dad." His eyes closed slowly. The beep of the monitor began to flatten, and Richard Sterling, my father, the man who searched for me tirelessly, who never gave up, who gave me a month of love that made up for 32 years of absence, was gone. The days after the funeral were a fog. Hundreds of people attended. Important businessmen, politicians, people I never met but whom my father had apparently touched in some way. Everyone offered condolences. Everyone said nice words, but I barely heard them. Robert became my anchor. He guided me through the necessary meetings, the document signings, the decisions that couldn't wait. The entire team closed ranks around me, protecting me, supporting me, ensuring I didn't drown in responsibilities when I could barely keep afloat emotionally. "Take the time you need," Mr. Reynolds told me. "The company isn't going to fall apart in a week." But I couldn't take time. If I stopped, if I allowed myself to feel completely, I would collapse. So I worked. I studied. I learned. I immersed myself in the business as my father had taught me, using work as a shield against the pain. And slowly, very slowly, I began to find my way. 2 months after the funeral, I presided over my first official board meeting as CEO of the Sterling Group. There were men in that room with decades more experience than me. There were people who clearly thought I was a girl playing business. But when I spoke, when I presented the strategy I had been developing with Robert and the team, when I demonstrated that I had done my homework, that I understood the numbers, that I had vision, I saw the skepticism turn into respect. It didn't happen overnight. There were mistakes. There were days I wanted to give up. There were moments when imposter syndrome consumed me. But each time, I remembered my father's words, "You are stronger than you think." The company not only survived under my direction, it thrived. We implemented new social responsibility initiatives. We expanded into markets my father had been considering. We modernized processes. And most importantly, we took care of our people. Because my father had taught me that a successful business isn't just numbers on paper, it's the people who make those numbers possible. 6 months later, I was in my office reviewing proposals when Martha knocked on the door. "Excuse me, Miss Valerie, but there is someone at reception asking for you. He says it is urgent." Martin Miller. I hadn't heard anything from him since the day of the announcement. What does he want? He didn't say. But he looks different. Thinner. Tired. I sighed. Part of me wanted to say throw him out. But another part, the part my father had cultivated, the part that believed in giving second chances, but not third ones, made me say, send him in. But have Robert present. Martin entered my office 5 minutes later. Martha had been right. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had deep circles under his eyes. The suit he was wearing was worn out. I stood up, but I didn't offer him a seat. "Valerie," he started with a hoarse voice. "Thank you for seeing me. I know I don't deserve even 5 minutes of your time." "No," I agreed. "You don't? What do you want, Martin?" "I didn't come to ask for money," he said quickly, raising his hands. "I know I have no right. I just came to tell you I'm sorry. Really, I'm sorry. I was a coward. I was weak. I failed you in every possible way, and I lived these last few months with that shame." "And?" I asked coldly. "And nothing. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't expect you to give me another chance. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not the money, not the status. You. I lost an extraordinary woman who loved me when she had no reason to. And I am going to live with that regret the rest of my life." I looked at this man who was once my husband and felt pity. Not love, not complete forgiveness, but pity. "I believe you," I said finally. "I believe you're sorry. But that changes nothing, Martin. We can't go back. We can't fix what broke. The only thing we can do is move forward." "I know," he responded with tears in his eyes. "I just wanted you to know. Wanted you to be happy, Valerie. You deserve to be happy." "I am," I said, and realized it was true. Finally, I am. Martin left, and that was the last time I saw him. A year after the day I sat on that curb in the rain, I was standing on the terrace of the mansion, the same one where I had breakfast with my father so many times. The company kept growing. I had started a foundation in my father's name that helped women in domestic abuse situations. I had established scholarships for students with limited resources. And I had started therapy. Because I realized that to truly be free, I needed to heal the wounds that 8 years of abuse had left. I needed to learn to trust again, to love again, to live without fear again. Martha approached with a tray of coffee. "Thinking of Mr. Richard?" "Always," I answered. "You know, sometimes I still can't believe all this really happened, that a year ago I was sitting on a curb with a broken suitcase, thinking my life had ended. And instead," Martha said with a smile, "it was barely beginning." She was right. My life with Martin hadn't been a life. It had been survival. But this was living for real, building something meaningful, helping others, honoring my father's memory, embracing the second chance fate had given me in the most unexpected way. There were still difficult days. I still missed my father with a physical ache. I still wondered what he would have said about this or that decision. But I also knew he would be proud. That wherever he was watching and smiling because I had kept my promise. I was living. Not just surviving, but truly living. And that curb where I sat a year ago, broken and lost, now felt like the starting point of everything. The place where the woman I had been ended, and the woman I was destined to be, began. Valerie Sterling. Businesswoman. Philanthropist. Daughter of Richard Sterling. But above all, survivor, fighter, a woman who refused to stay down when life knocked her over. And that, I told myself watching the sunset from my terrace, from my home, in my life that finally was mine, that was more than enough.